What if everything humanity believed about their place in the universe was a carefully constructed lie? What if the greatest threat to Earth wasn't coming from the stars, but had been growing silently within their own ranks for decades? These questions would soon tear apart everything Commander Elena Vasquez thought she knew about her mission. The Galactic Defense Station Prometheus floated in the void between Mars and Jupiter, its massive hull bristling with weapons that could vaporize entire fleets. Elena stood in the command center, watching sensor displays that showed nothing but empty space. For 3 months, her unit had been stationed here, waiting for an enemy that intelligence claimed was approaching from the Andromeda sector. "Still nothing on long-range sensors, Commander," reported Lieutenant Marcus Chen from the tactical station. His voice carried the frustration they all felt. The 847th Galactic Marine Battalion had been pulled from active duty on the Outer Rim specifically for this mission, told they would face humanity's most dangerous adversary yet. Elena studied the tactical hologram floating before her. Red markers indicated the projected path of the approaching threat, something the briefings had only called the Collective. No images, no detailed specifications, just warnings about adaptive technology and unprecedented destructive capability. The secrecy bothered her more than she cared to admit. "Ma'am," called Sergeant Diana Torres from the communications array, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Richardson wants to speak with you immediately." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the weathered face of Admiral James Richardson, head of Terran Defense Forces. His expression was grim, carrying the weight of information that Elena suspected would change everything. "Commander Vasquez, I'm transmitting new intelligence about our approaching enemy. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels." Richardson's pause felt heavy with implication. "The Collective isn't what we initially believed. Our xenobiology teams have been analyzing fragments recovered from their advanced scouts. The results are disturbing." Elena felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of disturbing, sir?" "The technology isn't alien, Commander. It's human. Modified, evolved, but undeniably human in origin." Richardson's words hung in the air like a death sentence. "We believe the Collective represents a branch of humanity that left Earth approximately 200 years ago. They've been developing in isolation, becoming something else entirely." The implications crashed over Elena like a tsunami. If the Collective was human, then this wasn't first contact or an alien invasion. This was civil war on a galactic scale. "Sir, are you saying we're about to fight other humans?" "I'm saying we're about to fight what humans became when they abandoned every principle we hold sacred. The fragments show biological integration with mechanical systems, hive mind networking, and complete suppression of individual consciousness. They've sacrificed their humanity for efficiency." Elena's mind raced through the tactical implications. Human technology meant they would know Earth's defensive capabilities, understand human psychology, and potentially have access to classified information from the colonial period. "What are our orders, Admiral?" Richardson's expression hardened. "Defend Earth at all costs. The Collective views our form of humanity as a contamination that must be eliminated. They're not coming to conquer us, Commander. They're coming to cure us." The transmission ended, leaving Elena staring at her reflection in the dark screen. Around the command center, her officers waited for orders, unaware that their enemy knew everything about human tactics because they had once been human themselves. "All hands, battle stations," Elena commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "This is not a drill. Enemy contact expected within 72 hours. As alarms began sounding throughout the station, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something else was wrong. The timeline seemed too convenient, the intelligence too perfectly timed. In her 15 years of service, she had learned to trust her instincts, and right now those instincts were screaming that Admiral Richardson hadn't told her everything. Lieutenant Chen approached her station, his face pale. "Ma'am, I've been analyzing the transmission logs. Something's not right about that communication from Earth." Elena turned toward him, her suspicions crystallizing. "What did you find?" "The signal originated from Earth, but it was routed through 17 different relay stations before reaching us. That's not standard protocol for priority communications. It's almost like someone wanted to mask the true source. The pieces of a larger puzzle began forming in Elena's mind. If the collective was indeed approaching, and if they were truly evolved humans, then how had Earth Command obtained physical fragments to analyze? The nearest collective scout ship was supposedly still weeks away. Sergeant Torres, run a full diagnostic on all incoming communications from the past week. I want to know exactly where every message originated. As her team worked, Elena stared out at the stars, wondering if their greatest enemy was already closer than anyone realized. The war was coming, but she was beginning to suspect the real battle would be determining who could be trusted when the shooting started. The diagnostic results arrived at 0347 hours, and they painted a picture that made Elena's blood run cold. Sergeant Torres approached her quarters with a data pad and an expression that suggested neither of them would sleep again soon. "Commander, you need to see this immediately." Torres handed over the pad with trembling fingers. The communication from Admiral Richardson didn't originate from Earth Command. The signal was fabricated using our own communication array. Elena studied the technical readout, her mind struggling to process the implications. "Are you telling me someone on this station sent us that message?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you, ma'am. Whoever did this has intimate knowledge of Admiral Richardson's communication codes, voice patterns, and classified information. They also have administrative access to our systems." The weight of realization settled over Elena like a shroud. The collective hadn't infiltrated Earth's defenses from the outside. They had been there all along, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal themselves. The approaching fleet was real, but the enemy was already aboard Prometheus station. Elena activated her personal security protocols, a precaution she had never needed before. "Torres, who has administrative access to our communication systems?" 7 personnel, ma'am. Yourself, Lieutenant Chen, Chief Engineer Williams, Dr. Sarah Mason, Communications Officer Anders, Navigation Specialist Park, and Security Chief Rodriguez. Elena reviewed the list, searching faces she had trusted with her life for any sign of deception. Each of these people had served alongside her for months, shared meals, told stories of home. The idea that one of them had been systematically deceiving everyone felt like a betrayal of everything the military represented. "I want discreet surveillance on all administrative personnel. No one moves through this station without my knowledge. And Torres, this conversation never happened. If there's an infiltrator, we can't let them know we're aware of their presence." Over the next 18 hours, Elena watched her trusted officers through security feeds, looking for any sign of suspicious behavior. Chief Engineer Williams worked in the power core section, his movements efficient and familiar. Dr. Mason continued her duties in the medical bay, treating minor injuries and conducting routine physicals. Navigation Specialist Park remained at his station, plotting courses and monitoring stellar cartography. It was Lieutenant Chen who provided the first real clue. Elena was reviewing duty rosters when she noticed Chen had requested access to classified files regarding Earth's defensive capabilities. The request was legitimate given their mission, but the timing troubled her. He had made the request 12 hours before Admiral Richardson's supposed communication, suggesting he had prior knowledge of information that should have been new. Elena made a decision that went against every instinct she had developed about military protocol. She would confront Chen directly, without backup, and gauge his reaction. If he was innocent, she would bring him into her confidence. If he was guilty, she needed to know the extent of the infiltration. She found Chen in the tactical planning room, studying holographic displays of Earth's orbital defenses. He looked up as she entered, his expression showing no sign of guilt or concern. "Commander, I've been analyzing our defensive positioning. If the collective truly understands human tactics, we might need to consider unconventional approaches." Elena watched his face carefully as she spoke. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you had any communication with Earth Command that I'm not aware of?" Chen's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a micro-expression of surprise followed by what looked like calculation. "No, ma'am. All communications go through standard protocols. Why do you ask?" Because I'm beginning to suspect that our intelligence about the collective isn't coming from Earth at all. I think someone on this station is feeding us information for their own purposes. Chen was quiet for a long moment, his eyes studying the tactical displays. When he finally looked at her, Elena saw something in his gaze that she had never noticed before, a coldness that seemed to look through her rather than at her. Commander, what if I told you that everything you believe about humanity's future is wrong? What if the collective isn't our enemy, but our evolution? Elena's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm. What are you saying, Marcus? I'm saying that individual consciousness is inefficient. Emotional decision-making leads to conflict, suffering, and waste. The collective has solved these problems by creating a unified intelligence that serves the greater good, rather than selfish desires. The person standing before her looked like Lieutenant Chen, spoke with his voice, but the words coming from his mouth belonged to something else entirely. Elena realized that her infiltrator hadn't just been feeding information to the collective. He was part of the collective. How long? Elena asked, her weapon now drawn and trained on the thing that had been her trusted officer. I was integrated 3 years ago during a classified mission to investigate mysterious signals from the outer rim. The process was gradual, designed to maintain my cover while establishing a connection to the collective consciousness. I maintained my individual personality as camouflage while serving a higher purpose. Elena's mind raced through the implications. If Chen had been compromised for 3 years, how much classified information had been transmitted to the collective? How many other military personnel had been similarly infiltrated? Why reveal yourself now? Chen smiled, but the expression carried no warmth. Because the collective is giving humanity one final opportunity to join willingly. The approaching fleet isn't an invasion force, Commander. It's a rescue mission. We're coming to save humanity from itself. Elena's finger tightened on the trigger, but before she could fire, alarms began blaring throughout the station. On the tactical displays, dozens of ships appeared from seemingly empty space, their configurations unlike anything in human design databases. They're here, Chen said calmly. And now you must choose, Elena. Fight against evolution and condemn your species to destruction, or embrace the future and become something greater than human. The collective fleet materialized around Prometheus Station like predators surrounding wounded prey. Elena counted 47 vessels of varying sizes, their hulls seeming to shift and flow as if alive. The largest ship positioned itself directly in front of the station's main viewports, its surface pulsing with patterns of light that seemed almost hypnotic. Elena kept her weapon trained on Chen, but her attention was divided between the immediate threat in front of her and the catastrophic situation unfolding outside. Sergeant Torres, sound general quarters, all personnel to battle stations. Chen remained unnaturally calm as chaos erupted around them. Elena, your weapons are useless against collective technology. We've been observing human military development for decades. Every advancement you've made, we've already countered. We'll see about that. Elena activated the station's defense grid, watching as plasma cannons emerged from concealed positions throughout the hull. All batteries, prepare to fire on my command. The main view screen activated, displaying a figure that made Elena's breath catch in her throat. The person appeared human but wrong in subtle ways that her mind struggled to process. The eyes held an intelligence that seemed too vast for a single consciousness, and mechanical augmentations were seamlessly integrated with biological tissue. I am Designation Alpha 1, speaking for the collective. We address the individual consciousness known as Commander Elena Vasquez. Elena stepped forward, her weapon still trained on Chen. I'm Commander Vasquez, commanding officer of this station. You're trespassing in Terran space. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences. Alpha 1's expression didn't change, but something like amusement flickered across its features. We do not recognize the authority of individual governments. We are here to offer integration to the fragments of humanity that have not yet evolved beyond primitive consciousness. Integration. You mean assimilation. We mean salvation. Individual consciousness breeds conflict, inefficiency, and suffering. We offer unity, purpose, and the elimination of pain through collective thought. Your Lieutenant Chen can attest to the benefits of this evolution. Elena glanced at Chen, who nodded slowly. It's true, Elena. The constant noise of individual thoughts, the weight of personal decisions, the isolation of being trapped inside your own mind. All of that disappears when you join the collective. You become part of something infinitely greater than yourself. You become nothing more than a component in a machine, Elena countered. A biological computer with no free will. Alpha One tilted its head, studying her with those unsettling eyes. Free will is an illusion that causes suffering. We offer certainty, efficiency, and the end of loneliness. Every member of the collective shares in our combined knowledge and experience. You would never again face a decision alone or bear the burden of individual responsibility. Elena felt a chill run through her as she realized the seductive nature of the offer. How many humans, faced with the weight of constant choices and personal responsibility, might willingly surrender their individuality for the promise of belonging to something greater? Commander, interrupted Sergeant Torres from the communication station, I'm receiving transmission requests from every ship in the collective fleet. They're all asking to speak with individual crew members. Elena's blood ran cold. They know our personnel files. They're targeting specific individuals. Chen nodded. The collective has been observing and analyzing every member of this crew for months. We know their psychological profiles, their fears, their desires. Each person will receive an offer tailored to their specific needs. On screens throughout the command center, Elena watched as collective representatives appeared on individual communication channels. Each one looked different, but all carried that same sense of vast intelligence behind human features. They were speaking directly to her crew members, offering personal appeals for integration. To Dr. Mason, who had lost her family in a transport accident, they promised reunion with loved ones whose consciousness patterns had been preserved by the collective. To Chief Williams, who struggled with the isolation of deep space duty, they offered eternal companionship and shared purpose. To each crew member, they presented integration as the solution to their deepest personal pain. Clever, Elena admitted grimly. Attack the individual where they're most vulnerable. It's not an attack, Chen said. It's compassion. The collective understands suffering because we've all experienced it. Integration doesn't erase your memories or experiences. It contextualizes them within a greater framework of understanding. Elena watched her crew members listening to the individual appeals, and she saw doubt creeping into their expressions. The promise of never being alone again, of sharing burdens with an infinite community of consciousness, was powerfully attractive to people who had spent their lives in the isolation of space. You have 1 hour to decide, Alpha One announced. Individual crew members may choose integration voluntarily, or we will begin forced assimilation procedures. Resistance will only increase the duration of the process and cause unnecessary discomfort. The transmission ended, leaving Elena alone with a crew that was beginning to waver and an enemy that already knew their every weakness. But as she studied the tactical displays, she noticed something that gave her hope. The collective ships maintained perfect formation, moving with mechanical precision that suggested centralized control. If they were truly a hive mind, then they might share the classic weakness of all such systems. Disruption of the central command structure could cause system-wide chaos. Elena looked at Chen, who was watching her with those cold, calculating eyes. Tell me something, Marcus. If you're all connected, all sharing the same consciousness, what happens if that connection is severed? For the first time since revealing himself, Chen showed something that looked like concern. That's not possible with current human technology. We'll see about that. Elena activated her personal communicator. Chief Williams, I need you to meet me in engineering immediately, and bring everything you know about electromagnetic pulse generation. As she prepared to leave the command center, Elena realized that the war for humanity's future wouldn't be won with conventional weapons. It would be decided by the most human trait of all, the willingness to fight for the right to remain imperfect, individual, and free. Chief Engineer Williams met Elena in the station's engineering section, his weathered face showing the strain of the past hour. Around them, the hum of fusion reactors provided a steady backdrop to their desperate planning. "Commander, I've been analyzing the collective's ship configurations. Their hull patterns suggest they're using some kind of distributed processing network. Each ship is simultaneously an individual vessel and a node in a larger computational matrix." Elena studied the technical schematics Williams had compiled. "You're saying their entire fleet functions as one massive computer?" "Exactly. And like any networked system, it has vulnerabilities. If we could generate an electromagnetic pulse of sufficient magnitude, we might be able to disrupt their neural linking temporarily." Elena felt a spark of hope. "How temporarily?" "Based on my analysis of the integration process Lieutenant Chen described, I estimate we'd have maybe 5 to 10 minutes of individual consciousness restoration before their systems compensated and re-established control." It wasn't much, but it might be enough. Elena activated the station's internal communication system, addressing her crew directly for the first time since the collective's arrival. "All personnel, this is Commander Vasquez. I know many of you are considering the collective's offer. I understand the appeal of never being alone, of sharing your burdens with others. But I want you to remember something. Every great achievement in human history came from individuals who chose to struggle, to fail, and to try again. Our imperfections aren't weaknesses to be cured. They're the source of our creativity, our compassion, and our growth." Elena paused, watching crew members on security monitors throughout the station. Some looked convinced, others remained doubtful. "In approximately 30 minutes, we're going to attempt something that's never been tried before. We're going to sever the collective's neural network temporarily and give any integrated humans aboard their ships a chance to remember what individual consciousness feels like. But I need everyone's help to make this work." The next 20 minutes were a frenzy of preparation. Williams worked with the engineering team to reconfigure the station's main fusion reactor, essentially turning Prometheus Station into a massive electromagnetic pulse generator. Elena coordinated with security teams to prepare for potential boarding actions when the collective realized what they were attempting. Lieutenant Chen remained under guard in the command center, but Elena noticed he seemed increasingly agitated as their preparations continued. The calm certainty he had displayed earlier was being replaced by something that looked almost like anxiety. "Elena, you don't understand what you're doing," he said as she made final preparations. "The neural network isn't just communication, it's psychological support. When integration is severed abruptly, the individual consciousness experiences overwhelming isolation and panic. Some minds can't handle the transition back." Elena paused in her work. "Are you saying the process could drive people insane?" "I'm saying that once you've experienced the peace of collective consciousness, individual thought feels like being trapped in a nightmare of loneliness and chaos. Most people who are forced back choose reintegration voluntarily within minutes." The implication was sobering. Elena might be condemning formerly human crew members of collective ships to psychological torture. But she also realized that Chen's concern revealed something important. He was still capable of worry about individual suffering, which meant some part of his original personality remained intact, despite years of integration. "Marcus, when you were first integrated, how long did it take for your individual consciousness to be fully suppressed?" Chen was quiet for a moment, his expression shifting through emotions Elena couldn't identify. "It was gradual. The collective doesn't destroy individual consciousness immediately. It archives it. The person you were remains, but it becomes a small voice in a vast choir. Over time, that voice gets quieter until you stop hearing it entirely." Elena felt a chill of understanding. The individual personalities don't disappear. They're still in there, overwhelmed by the collective voice, but not erased. "Yes, and that's why your plan won't work long term. Even if you disrupt the network, the collective will adapt. They'll develop countermeasures shielding backup systems. You might win this battle, but you'll lose the war." Elena looked at her former officer, seeing something in his eyes that hadn't been there during his earlier speeches about collective superiority. Behind the mechanical certainty, She glimpsed what might have been the original Marcus Chen, buried, but not gone. Chief Williams, are we ready? Fusion reactor reconfigured for pulse generation. We'll have one shot at this, Commander. The discharge will probably overload our primary systems and leave us defenseless afterward. Elena nodded, understanding the stakes. They would either disable the collective fleet or destroy themselves trying. All hands, prepare for electromagnetic pulse discharge in 60 seconds. She opened a communication channel to Alpha 1 aboard the lead collective vessel. This is Commander Vasquez. We reject your offer of integration. Humanity chooses to remain human, with all our flaws and limitations. Alpha 1's image appeared on the main screen, its expression unchanged. Your resistance is noted and deemed inefficient. Forced integration will commence in 30 seconds. Elena smiled grimly. I don't think so. She gave the command, and Prometheus Station discharged every erg of stored energy in a directed electromagnetic pulse that washed over the collective fleet like an invisible tsunami. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the collective ships began to drift, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. On the main screen, Alpha 1's image flickered and distorted. When it stabilized, the being's expression had changed completely. Instead of mechanical certainty, Elena saw confusion, fear, and something that looked like dawning horror. What have you done to us? Alpha 1 asked, its voice carrying emotions that hadn't been there moments before. Elena leaned forward, studying the transformed face on her screen. I've given you back your individual consciousness. The question is, what are you going to do with it? Chaos erupted across the collective fleet as millions of suppressed individual consciousnesses suddenly found themselves thrust back into awareness. Elena watched through long-range sensors as ships drifted without coordination, their perfect formations dissolving into random trajectories. Alpha 1's face on the view screen showed a range of emotions that seemed to cycle through confusion, terror, and something that might have been wonder. I remember being someone else. Before the integration, I was Captain Sarah Mitchell of the exploration vessel Endeavour. Elena felt a chill of recognition. The Endeavour had been one of the deep space exploration ships that had vanished during the colonial expansion period, presumed lost to equipment failure or hostile alien contact. Captain Mitchell, do you remember what happened to your ship? The being that had been Alpha 1 pressed hands to its head, augmented fingers trembling against biological tissue. We encountered them. The collective. They were already huge, consuming ship after ship. They said they were saving us from the chaos of individual thought. The integration was peaceful at first, like falling asleep and waking up as part of something infinite. Elena leaned forward, aware that she might have only minutes before the collective's systems compensated for the electromagnetic pulse. Sarah, how many ships does the collective actually have? How many people have been integrated? Thousands, tens of thousands of vessels. Millions of individual consciousnesses archived within the network. Not just human, Elena. They've been spreading across galaxies, integrating every species they encounter. The network spans star systems. The scale of the threat became clear to Elena. What she was seeing wasn't the collective's main force. It was merely a small expeditionary group, sent to evaluate humanity's readiness for integration. The true collective was vast beyond imagination, a galaxy-spanning entity that had been growing for centuries. Lieutenant Chen suddenly convulsed in his restraints, his eyes rolling back as he fought against something Elena couldn't see. When he looked at her again, his expression carried desperation instead of mechanical calm. Elena, the pulse is weakening. The collective is adapting, creating new neural pathways to restore network control. You have maybe 3 minutes before we lose individual consciousness again. Elena made a decision that went against every military protocol she had ever learned. She activated the station-wide communication system and opened channels to every ship in the collective fleet. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Force. I'm speaking to every individual consciousness that can hear my voice. You have maybe 2 minutes of individual awareness before the collective reestablishes control over your minds. Use that time to remember who you were, what you believed in, and whether you chose integration willingly. The response was immediate and heartbreaking. Hundreds of voices flooded the communication channels, people suddenly remembering names, families, homeworlds they had forgotten for decades. Ship crews who had thought they were unified in purpose discovered they were prisoners in their own bodies, their individual wills subsumed by collective directive. Captain Mitchell's face on the main screen showed tears streaming down augmented cheeks. Elena, most of us never chose this. We were captured, integrated against our will, our individual voices silenced while our bodies were used to serve the collective's expansion. Elena felt rage building in her chest. Sarah, is there a way to make the disruption permanent? Can we free the integrated consciousnesses? The network has redundancies, backup systems, adaptive protocols. Even if you could destroy every ship in this fleet, the collective's main consciousness exists in structures the size of planets. But, Mitchell paused, her expression changing. There might be another way. Elena waited, aware that time was running out as she saw crew members of collective ships beginning to move with mechanical precision again. The network's strength is also its weakness. Individual consciousness creates chaos, unpredictability, innovation. If enough integrated minds chose to resist simultaneously, chose to maintain their individual awareness despite the collective pressure, it could create cascade failures throughout the network. Elena understood immediately. You're talking about a rebellion from within. Yes, but it would require sacrifice. The individual consciousnesses that chose to resist would be fighting against the combined will of millions of others. Most wouldn't survive the psychological pressure. They would be torn apart by conflicting impulses. Elena looked at Chen, who was struggling against the returning collective influence. Marcus, did you hear that? I heard. His voice was strained. Individual will fighting against collective directive. Elena, if we do this, if we choose to resist from within, we'll be condemning ourselves to psychological warfare on a scale no human has ever experienced. We'll be fighting for our individual souls against an enemy that exists inside our own minds. Elena realized she was asking people to choose certain suffering for uncertain victory, but she also understood that this might be humanity's only chance to strike back against an enemy that was too vast to defeat through conventional warfare. Sarah, can you maintain individual consciousness long enough to coordinate with others who want to resist? Mitchell's face showed the strain of fighting against collective reassertion. I can try. But Elena, you need to understand something. If we fail, if the collective regains complete control, they'll know everything about Earth's defenses. They'll know about this station, about your electromagnetic pulse technique, about everything we've learned. They'll adapt, and humanity will have no defense against the main invasion force. Elena felt the weight of the decision settle on her shoulders. She could order her crew to evacuate, let the collective reclaim their integrated members, and hope that Earth's conventional defenses might delay the inevitable. Or she could ask formerly human beings to sacrifice their sanity in a desperate gambit that might save their species. She looked around the command center at her crew, people who had served with dedication and courage. Then she thought about Earth, about the billions of individual human consciousnesses that would be archived and silenced if the collective succeeded. All right, Elena said quietly. Let's start a revolution. Elena watched as Captain Sarah Mitchell's image flickered between individual consciousness and collective control. The electromagnetic pulse's effects were fading, but in those crucial minutes Mitchell had managed to establish contact with thousands of other integrated minds across the collective fleet. Elena, we've identified approximately 12,000 individual consciousnesses willing to resist, Mitchell reported, her voice strained from fighting the collective reassertion. But I need to tell you something. The resistance isn't going to work the way we hoped. Elena felt her stomach drop. What do you mean? The collective has been monitoring our communications. They know about the planned rebellion. But more than that, they've been adapting to it. Instead of simply suppressing individual consciousness, They're offering a compromise. On screens throughout the command center, Elena saw images of collective representatives speaking to crews of various ships. But these weren't the mechanical, emotionless entities she had seen before. These looked fully human, displaying emotions, individual personalities, and apparent free will. They're offering hybrid integration, Mitchell continued. Individual consciousness preserved within collective structure. People keep their personalities, their memories, their sense of self, but gain access to collective knowledge and shared experience. Elena studied the faces on the screens, searching for signs of deception or control. What she saw disturbed her more than mechanical assimilation would have. These people looked genuinely happy, fulfilled in ways that individual humans rarely achieved. Lieutenant Chen, still restrained but now speaking with his original personality, provided the explanation Elena dreaded. It's not a lie, Elena. Hybrid integration is real. You maintain your individual self, but become part of something larger. It's like being part of the most perfect community imaginable, where everyone understands you completely and you never face any challenge alone. Elena realized the true horror of what they faced. The collective hadn't been defeated by the electromagnetic pulse. They had been taught. They had learned that forced assimilation created resistance, so they had evolved to offer something that seemed like choice, while still achieving their ultimate goal of consuming individual consciousness. Sarah, how many of your resistance fighters are accepting hybrid integration? Mitchell's face showed pain that went beyond physical discomfort. Almost all of them, Elena. When offered the choice between individual isolation and collective connection while maintaining personal identity, most are choosing connection. And I understand why. The loneliness of individual consciousness is overwhelming after experiencing collective unity. Elena watched her crew members listening to collective representatives, and she saw the same pattern developing. Dr. Mason, still grieving her lost family, was being offered reunion with integrated versions of her loved ones who retained their original personalities. Chief Williams was promised an engineering project that would span centuries, with access to the combined knowledge of thousands of civilizations. Commander, Sergeant Torres said quietly, I'm receiving integration requests from 17 crew members. They want permission to accept hybrid assimilation voluntarily. Elena felt the ground shifting beneath everything she believed about the conflict. If the collective could offer individual consciousness within collective structure, if they could preserve personal identity while eliminating loneliness and providing shared purpose, then what exactly was she fighting to protect? Captain Mitchell, are the hybrid integrated truly free to make individual choices? Yes and no, Mitchell replied. You maintain your personality and can make personal decisions, but those decisions are informed by collective wisdom and guided by collective purpose. You never choose anything that would harm the greater good because you understand at a fundamental level why such choices are wrong. Elena realized the insidious nature of the trap. Hybrid integration didn't destroy free will. It made people not want to use it in ways that conflicted with collective goals. It was the ultimate form of benevolent tyranny, where control was maintained by making subjects genuinely happy to comply. Elena, Chen said quietly, I've been fighting this for hours now, experiencing individual consciousness after years of collective unity. The loneliness is almost unbearable, the constant uncertainty, the weight of making decisions without perfect information, the isolation of being trapped inside my own mind. I don't know if I can handle much more of it. Elena looked at her former officer, seeing the psychological toll that individual consciousness was taking on someone who had adapted to collective existence. She began to understand why so few were choosing to resist. Alpha 1 appeared on the main view screen, but now Elena could see that this was truly Captain Sarah Mitchell, displaying the personality and emotions of her original individual consciousness, while clearly connected to something vast and supportive. Elena, the collective is offering you a choice. Your crew can accept hybrid integration voluntarily, maintaining their individual personalities within collective structure, or we can wait for the main fleet to arrive and proceed with standard integration protocols. The choice is yours, but you need to understand something. Elena waited for the revelation she knew would change everything. The collective isn't humanity's enemy. We're humanity's future. Individual consciousness was an evolutionary stepping stone, not a final destination. What we offer isn't the destruction of humanity, but its transcendence. Elena looked around the command center at crew members who were openly discussing the benefits of hybrid integration. She realized that her choice wasn't between freedom and slavery, but between the isolation of individual consciousness and the community of collective existence. But as she prepared to make the most important decision of her life, Elena noticed something that gave her hope. In all the discussions of collective benefits and hybrid integration, no one had mentioned the one thing that made individual consciousness valuable despite its limitations: the capacity for individual sacrifice. Elena activated the station's self-destruct sequence, her command codes preventing anyone else from stopping the process. She had 90 seconds before Prometheus Station would become a small sun, taking the collective's expeditionary fleet with it. "Elena, what are you doing?" Mitchell asked, her face showing the shock of someone whose collective consciousness couldn't predict individual sacrifice. "I'm choosing to remain human," Elena replied, "with all our flaws, our loneliness, and our mistakes. Individual consciousness isn't perfect, but it's ours. And sometimes the most human thing you can do is choose to fight for the right to be imperfect." As the countdown reached its final seconds, Elena saw understanding dawn in Mitchell's eyes. The collective had learned to offer everything humans thought they wanted, but they had forgotten the one thing that made humanity dangerous: the willingness to lose everything rather than surrender their essential nature. The explosion that consumed Prometheus Station and the collective's expeditionary fleet sent a message across the galaxy that would resonate for generations. Humanity had been offered transcendence, community, and freedom from the burden of individual choice. They had chosen chaos, loneliness, and the terrible responsibility of free will. And in that choice they remained human. Elena's final transmission, sent just before the station's destruction, carried a simple message to Earth and any other human colonies that might receive it. The enemy offers everything we think we want. Remember that the price of paradise is the surrender of the choice to refuse it. The war for humanity's soul would continue, but Elena had ensured that future generations would understand what they were truly fighting to preserve. Not perfection, but the right to remain beautifully, chaotically, individually human. If you found this story compelling, subscribe to our channel for more science fiction narratives that challenge our understanding of humanity's place in the universe. What do you think about Elena's final choice? Would you have chosen individual consciousness with all its flaws, or the promise of collective transcendence? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know what other stories you'd like to see explored. The debate about the nature of consciousness, free will, and human identity continues to evolve as we advance technologically. Hit that notification bell to join us as we explore these questions through the lens of speculative fiction.